Okay, so I'm gonna read your quote about the dorm experience, which I found amusing. You ready?
Yes.
So I think a bit of context. You said you wanted to experience a dorm, so
Yeah.
you kind of lay down, and next thing, there's a 300-pound Polish rider was spread eagle on his back, snoring louder than I had ever heard anyone snore. So loud that volunteers brought a stream of visitors to peek in on him. He was his own roadside attraction.
This is true. This is true.
I love that the fact that there's a Polish guy out there who just had a great experience, keep telling everyone he slept everywhere. And meanwhile, there's hundreds of people that remember him.
A lot too. I sure do.
This week, we have Kevin Fitzpatrick, who lives in Minneapolis but is originally from the Bay Area. Kevin completed PBP in 2015 after a DNF in 2011. He's also a volunteer and was the director of the 2022 Cooley Challenge 1200K. Interestingly, Kevin became a street artist relatively late in life. His installations of miniature mouse doors on buildings have gained quite a global following. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's good to be here. I like your channel.
Thank you. Okay, first question. What does PBP mean to you?
So PBB to me was kind of a challenge, a goal, a thing to work towards. And it kind of directed what I did for 4, 5, 6 years while I learned to ride a bike, essentially. Yeah.
That's cool. And I know you have quite a story, and I think it's really interesting the fact that you DNF first and then came back and finished it, which we'll hear more about later. What did it feel like when you actually finished PBP that second time in 2015? What did the finish line feel like?
I expected this glorious feeling of accomplishment. In reality, I was relieved to be done. It was not some great, and it was in the rain, and there weren't a lot of people there, and it was a bit of a mess. So
Yeah.
I expected to have a feeling. I didn't have that feeling. I was
Okay.
happy to be done.
Yeah.
It was a hard
Yeah.
ride.
Kevin, maybe you're dead inside. Who knows? Okay.
This is
Did the satisfaction come later, or it really was, I've done this, now I can move on with my life?
you know a little of both. This I find that I ride for the challenge and not for the enjoyment of the ride.
Okay.
People ask me after my big rides, did you have fun? And I'm like, well, it really wasn't about the fun. For
Yeah.
me, it was about the challenge. And my daughter learned to ask when she was really young, were you challenged? And that's the answer. So I had a sense of accomplishment afterwards as far as the challenge goes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting one, long distance riding, enjoying it while it's happening or enjoying it when it's past.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing, and it changes, I think, as you get older in life, perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah. I
know.
think I'm really into type two fun, the kind,
Yes.
if you understand the phrase. Yeah.
Yeah, which one is that's the good one, is that right?
No,
That's the bad
for
one.
me,
Okay.
that's the bad one. That's
Okay.
bad at the time, good later. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of weird because obviously type 1, I assume, is the one you're enjoying in the moment.
Yeah.
That's what we should all strive for, Kevin, I think, in
Yeah.
life.
Yeah.
Maybe. Cool. Actually, your name, Kevin, it's very Irish, so I assume maybe Irish Catholic, which would explain maybe enjoying type 2 suffering. Is that right?
That's right. That's
Okay, there you go.
nailed it.
All right. Okay, let's go back to the start. Tell me about your background in cycling, maybe your earliest memory, that kind of thing.
I learning to ride when I was a little kid and riding around the neighborhood, of course, and then in Boy Scouts, the bicycling merit badge. But after high school, not a lot of bicycling, not hardly any at all. And then late in life, 2010 or 2007, right after the 2007 PBP. Uh,
Yeah.
I heard about PBP. I didn't own a bicycle at the time.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
thought that would be fun. In fact, it was in an article that said, "Look at these idiots! Look what they do," and it
Exactly.
pointed to a ride report. And I read the ride report, and then I read 100 ride reports, and I was just
Yeah.
fascinated. So,
Yeah. That is funny when you look at a subculture from the outside and you just pretty much think they're idiots. And then years later, you're one of those idiots. It's
yes,
funny.
yeah, yeah.
Cool. Um, so tell me just in general, why do you ride? How does it make you feel?
You know, you and I have talked offline about this. I have imposter syndrome, and I've been able to explain away many of the accomplishments in my life. Uh, and there's been a lot of them. When I'm on a when I do an event and I finish it, I can't explain it away. Like I did it, right. I
Yeah.
wrote PvP. I can't convince myself that I didn't earn it, and that fed some little thing in me. And I think since then, in both bicycles and other areas, I've sought to do things that are clear accomplishments to me, filling whatever that deep abyss is that is, you know.
Good.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's funny because maybe I think maybe we're a bit similar. I think some people finish these events and they're just so, they broadcast it everywhere. They just feel so good about themselves and
mhm,
everything. I don't really feel that at all. A little bit, but it's
yeah,
maybe the shame or guilt. I have no idea what's going on.
right.
Cool. All right. So actually, so let's back to PBP.
Okay.
Do you remember the year you first heard about PBP? I think you might have just
Yeah,
mentioned it there.
2007, right after the 2007 PvP.
Okay. And what was the context? Were you already riding at that point? Oh, you
No,
didn't own a
no,
bike, obviously.
didn't own a
Okay.
bike. It
So
was
how?
a website Metafilter,
Yeah.
and they collect links to things. And somebody had posted a link to a PvP ride report for that year. It had been a really rainy year, apparently. And it literally, the guy said, "Look at these idiots. Can you imagine they do this? Would you do it yourself?"
Yeah.
I read the report, loved it, thought it was amazing, wished I could do something like that. And
Yeah.
yeah, that started me.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how lots of people would read that report and have a normal human
Oh, of course.
behavior, but you had a different
You and I,
response.
we're not normal. No.
Cool. So then when did you decide? Well, you had to get a bike first. Okay.
Mhm.
So tell me about what happened there. You got a
Yeah,
bike with the intention of doing PBP, or it was just kind of
with
in
the
the back of your
intention.
mind?
With the intention.
Wow.
I bought a bike. I bought a Trek 520 touring bike,
Yeah.
and back of an envelope, and I still have the envelope. I wrote a plan, and that plan was 2007. That year, I was going to figure out how to ride a hill. Right? And found a friend, and I said, "Come teach me to climb up a hill." Uh,
Yeah.
my plan the next year was to do 5 centuries. The year
Yes.
after that was to do 5 double centuries because they looked
Wow.
cool, and there was a really cool
Yeah.
shirt to do. I wanted that shirt.
Yes.
And then the year before PvP, my plan was to do an SR, and then
Yeah.
PvP do an SR and PvP. So that was my plan. I put it on envelope,
Wow.
and I think Death Ride was in there somewhere as well. And
That's amazing.
actually came down with prostate cancer in the middle of all that, and had the
Okay.
surgery, and that still made it through, right? So
Wow.
yeah.
So, Kevin, that's really interesting. And already I'm enjoying this interview because, right? So, you didn't have a bike, okay?
No,
And you had heard this strange kind of activity that people are doing, and you said, that's for me, okay?
right.
And then you laid it out actually on an envelope, but you sent me a ride report maybe later in
Yeah,
life. You were known as Mr. Spreadsheet. Isn't that
sure.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And obviously, this kind of behavior is throughout, it kind of permeates your life in other things as well. Is that correct? Or is it?
Yes, it's yes. Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Oh, that's good
Uh,
stuff. And tell me, when you set these goals, and it sounded like it was very structured on the envelope,
mhm,
which you probably
mhm.
have, in a glass frame somewhere, but do you actually then, are they just outlines or are they like fixed goals? I need to do 5 centuries that year.
I'm pretty inflexible on that stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty disappointed if I don't execute it.
Oh my God. Have you ever met
Yeah.
anyone like yourself before, Kevin? That's important.
I don't know. I don't think
Okay.
I've been
Well,
anywhere.
that's great. That's so cool, though, that you just followed through on that incredible thing. And
Yeah.
had you ever done something like to have no bike and then suddenly say, I'm going to do 1200K in Paris, in France?
Yeah.
That's
I
quite a
yeah.
leap.
I was not physical up till then. I was never athletic in my life. I never did
Yeah.
physical. And yeah, no, I had never done anything like that before.
Okay.
No.
Cool. All right. So then, do you remember your strategy going into 2011 PBP, your first time, maybe how you formulated that strategy, etc.? And you were living in California at the time.
Yes, it was.
You were riding with the SF Randonneurs.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so I remember I had a fueling strategy. I was entirely powder based at the time, and I made my own. In I don't know, whatever the Hammer Nutrition one is. I made my
Okay.
own. I
Yeah.
was buying 50-pound bags of maltodextrin, and yeah, try going through TSA with all of that. Uh,
Yeah.
so I was going to fuel on that. I knew I was slowish, and I was going to planning on using the full 90 hours. Or as much of it as possible. I did have a spreadsheet. I did lay out. I have to do the spreadsheet more to prove that I can,
Okay.
rather. It's only ever once said I couldn't, and that was the 1000K up at. But but my strategy was to follow that. And that gave me 3 hours of sleep each night, 4 hours at the
Yeah.
control hour sleep, and yeah, that was kind of my strategy. Other than that, it was just keep moving.
And were you going to ride with others?
No, no,
Okay.
I just because of the way I ride, I often find myself riding alone. Yeah.
Cool. A brief aside: logistics getting to France. Tell me
Hmm.
about that.
Klaus at that time had a whole package. There was
Okay.
a group in France that just a whole package. I did that. He arranged the hotel. He arranged
Yeah.
the plane tickets. I mean, I think he arranged everything.
Oh, it's great.
So
Cool.
that worked
So,
great. Yeah.
so not a big deal.
Right.
Okay, so then let's tell us about the actual ride itself. And I read your excellent ride report, by the way.
Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead.
thanks. Uh, I started out in a late at night, like at 5:30 in the evening. I had um, oh, it was great. I remember it was a huge crowd that year, and I remember the iconic double line of lights going into the infinite distance. That was awesome. Uh, I built up speed, a lot of time in the bank early on. I was doing really well. I was feeling really strong, I, and then not far into the ride, 300K ish into it, like right after Villain, my bike got kind of flaky feeling,
Yeah.
and I got off it a couple times to check the bike, and it was making weird creaking noises. I thought it was my saddle. I had a leather saddle, and then all of a sudden, it was like somebody had just grabbed the back of the bike and was shaking it. I got off of it and I looked, and one of my main tubes had just severed
Oh
completely,
boy. Yeah.
completely through.
I'll post a photograph as
Uh,
we talk about this.
yeah,
Yeah.
I had I think about 3 hours in the bank at that time, but it was a really remote place. There
Yeah.
wasn't, and it was pre cell phone. I didn't have a cell phone on me. There was no way to call for help. People were spinning by and going by, and I saw lots of friends go by, and they kept going. There wasn't anything we could do, but some people stopped and looked at it. If I had a broomstick and baling wire and stuff like that, maybe I could do something, a welder.
Yeah.
Uh, Eventually, one of the motorcycles came through. The that was patrolling the course. He called a van. The van came and picked me up. At that point, I had maybe 2 hours, an hour or two left on the.
Yeah.
They got me back to the start really quickly, or not the start, but to Villain really quickly.
Yeah.
took it to the mechanical tent, and they just shook their head at it. They were like, no. They offered
Yeah.
to sell me a bike.
Yeah.
Uh, so I'm talking, trying to figure out what my options are. There weren't any really good English speakers there. There was one woman that was good, doing a good job translating, though. But my time just getting smaller and
Yeah.
smaller.
Yeah.
You always question these kinds of things afterwards. What if this?
Sure.
What if that? What
Sure.
if this? What if that? Right?
Yeah.
I think the only thing I didn't do, and I'm not the type that would, so I don't know even if the option had been there. Uh, is I didn't hunt around for somebody that was DNFing. I didn't think
Yeah.
about somebody else that's DNFing. Maybe I could take their bike, right?
Yeah.
But I'd heard horror stories and seen for myself that if my saddle is changed a couple millimeters,
Yes.
so I'm not sure how I would have done on somebody else's bike.
Completely.
So in the end, that was it. My ride was over at that point.
Kevin, can I ask, and it could happen to any of us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it's helpful you talk about this. So as soon as you saw that, was it the top tube maybe, you
Yeah.
said, my ride is over, or you said, oh, what can I do to keep going?
What I said would not be repeatable here.
You can say anything you want, Kevin. I don't care.
But after that,
Yeah.
I just immediately went into problem solving mode. Okay, what am I going to
Yeah.
have to do? Do I solve it? What's the next step and things like that. So
Yeah.
I didn't immediately feel like my ride was over. I sensed it probably was, but I was going to do a lot of stuff, and I just, the frustration was I didn't have the opportunity to do
Completely.
the other
I
stuff, right?
Yeah. I also think, Kevin, your longest ride to that point had been 600K.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was touch and go. Probably a good chance you were going to make it. An excellent chance, we'll say, but it wasn't going to be a Charlie Miller.
Right.
Therefore, a change in equipment, really
Yeah.
hard to pull
Yeah.
off, I suspect. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So then maybe you want to tell me about that train journey. I kind of enjoyed that story, that part. I enjoyed the whole
Sure.
DNF, let's be honest. Okay.
Sure.
Okay.
So Klaus's truck was there still for drop bags and things like that.
Yeah.
I was able to get my bike onto the truck
Yeah.
bags. So now I don't
Yeah.
have any
It
pain.
probably could fit into smaller spaces at that point as well, the bike. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, a volunteer drove me to a train station.
Yeah.
At the train station, I met a handful of other people that were DNFing. I took the train to a number of cities, and I've lost memory of where all
Yeah.
this were. But I ended up in Paris on one side of town. Fortunately, I'd been to Paris dozens and dozens of times. I
Yeah.
loved Paris, my favorite city. So I'd been there many, many times, knew it like the back of my hand. And I, in full kit with my bike shoes, clip clopped across the whole city of Paris.
Oh my God.
Took the metro for part of it. Knew where some of the
Yeah.
trains were closed and routed around them. It worked great. And then took the RER back out to Saint-Quentin, and yeah, ended up.
And we're not going to dwell much longer on this, but how did it feel? Just, you see everyone else coming in, finishing, and meanwhile, your goddamn bicycle just messed you up.
That was
Yeah.
probably the hardest part.
Yeah.
Was probably the hardest part. Hanging out at the hotel for the almost 4 days that everybody was gone was nice. It was relaxing. It gave me some time to process it. There were partners and family of riders there, and I got to hang out. I went into Paris. Maybe, yeah, I think I did. So that's a bonus. But yeah, that was hard. It was hard seeing them all come back and packing up and hearing their stories and, you know, wanting to have been part of that. And these are the people that and I wanted to be there with them, and
Yeah.
I couldn't, right? And you tell people you DNF'd, and there's absolutely no way I could have not.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
my ride was over. The only saving grace in my mind was that it was through no personal shortcomings,
Completely.
right? And
Yeah.
that was it
Yeah.
for me. Yeah, that
You
was
know,
great.
it's funny because when I was new to riding, you mentioned the death ride. One of my first rides was the death ride, which I DNF'd, and like you, it was mechanical. Even though there was a slight chance I could have kept going, I was just so pissed off. I just, and again, it just felt like it wasn't the bike's fault; it was my fault in some
Yeah,
way. Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's hard.
cool. It is hard. Okay, let's go on to happier times, Kevin. Okay.
Sure,
All right.
sure.
So your second PBP attempt,
Hmm.
2015.
Hmm.
I'm just going to read your list of accomplishments, okay?
Okay.
Before that, right?
All
Okay.
right. Yeah.
So in 2013, you did the Gold Rush.
Hmm.
That's a 1200K.
Yeah.
I think all of these are 1200Ks.
Yeah.
2014, Taste of Carolinas. Um, and then the third one was the California Central Coast.
Right.
So you did three 1200Ks. Two of them were in 2014, the
Hmm.
year before 2015.
Right.
Wow, you are just coming into PBP to show who's boss at this point.
Yeah.
Is that right?
At that point, I felt a lot more confident than I had the first time. Yeah.
Can I ask that Gold Rush one? So that was your
Hmm.
first 1200K actually
Hmm.
completing. How did that
Right.
feel?
That was awesome. That was the hardest for me of all of
Yeah.
them. I came home. My wife was like, "How was it?" And I burst into tears. It was hard. Um, that was awesome. It was awesome for a number of reasons. It was great because I rode the entire thing with my friend Manny, every
Yeah.
inch of it. I rode together. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't know what would have if we hadn't been supporting each other through that.
I
Uh,
get you.
it was an awesome, fun ride.
Yeah. And I would imagine you were a little bit paranoid about mechanical issues at that point. You'd hear something funny and you'd
Yeah,
say, that's it, I'm
yep,
off.
yep.
That's funny. That's
Um,
great. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because obviously your first attempt, 2011, you had just done a 600K.
mhm.
This time you've done three 1200Ks.
Yeah,
So really, yeah, PBP doesn't know what's going to hit it. Isn't that right? Okay.
It's,
So maybe tell us about that. Tell us about 2015. And that was a very wet year, but I think 2011 was a wet year as well, or not?
wouldn't know. I wasn't there for
Okay. Okay.
it.
The
It
hotel
was
room had a roof.
it
Okay.
was
Good.
pretty
All right.
dry. Uh,
Okay.
uh, yeah, 2015. The latter half of it was pretty wet.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of rain in the first part. Um, you and I both know you ride. It's rain. It's hot. It's cold. It's windy. You just
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't even notice when the rain stops. Right? It's just the condition. Right. And that year, um, I don't remember the start as much as I remember the first start. I do remember getting into the controls. I tend to fly through controls. I don't hang
Yeah.
out. I usually don't eat the food. I carry my own food. I don't tend to wait in lines anywhere. By this point, the maltodextrin didn't work for me anymore, and I was eating more real foods, bars, stuff like that. Um, the ride went smoothly. I built up a lot of time. I shared a hotel with Rob Hawks at Lodiac.
Yeah.
He was on a different time schedule than I was, so we didn't even really overlap in there. So we had the rooms to ourselves when we were there. And that worked well. A funny thing happened that first night in the hotel on the way out. I stressed. I couldn't, I laid there and stressed about falling asleep and stressed about falling asleep. And
Yeah.
then after about 3 hours, I woke up from a deep sleep, realizing I had been dreaming about
Yes.
falling asleep. Got really good sleep.
That's funny. Actually, can I ask you one question, Kevin? And maybe just so coming into the second PBP, like what was your attitude? Was it uh, Oh my God. Am I cursed? Will I finish this thing? Like, were you just nervous that something else bad would happen? That kind of thing. What was going on in your
I
mind?
don't remember being really nervous. I had done
Okay.
three. I felt pretty confident. I had
Yeah.
looked at the profile. I felt like I had done harder rides with the Gold Rush.
Yeah.
So I felt pretty confident at that point. I mean, I was doing three, four, five, 600 Ks a year at that point. So I felt good. I felt there wasn't any question in my mind that I couldn't do this.
Yeah.
Uh, and it was kind of the bookend.
Yeah.
I'm finally going to put the bookend on it. Right.
Yeah. There's one other thing I want to read here. And I'm sorry to derail
Sure.
you. I know
Oh,
you have
no,
a lot to
that's
say,
fine.
but I just like this quote. Being a slower rider in one of the earliest start times, I think I was eventually passed by at least 5,000 of the 6,500 riders. I think
Yeah.
it's an interesting psychological, and
It's true.
because it's almost much better to pass people than be passed, and that's a
Yeah.
lot of people to pass. You can. Were you
Yes.
counting each one or
No.
no?
I was counting on the waves. Waves.
And psychologically, is that a problem or you just
No,
don't care?
no.
Okay.
I,
All
I,
right.
I ride my rides. My rides are a certain pace. I realize that there are more stronger riders out there, and I
Yeah.
know that a lot of those stronger riders are going to DNF because they've burned themselves out. I know what works for me. I
Yeah.
do what works for me.
Another brief aside that just pops
Yeah,
into my mind. I'm sorry.
yeah.
So the first bike, I saw a picture of it. Was it Cannondale maybe or something? What was
That
it? The
was
first one?
Trek 520. Yeah.
Okay. So this next one, I assume you didn't repair the Trek 520. You,
No, they
you had a
replaced
new
the
one.
frame. They
Okay.
gave me a new frame for it. This was a different Trek, and I don't even remember what it was. It's a carbon fiber Trek.
Okay.
It was
All
it
right.
was
Okay.
lighter. It was definitely
Cool.
lighter, but tricked out the same way. Yeah,
Cool. Okay. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt you. So
that's
you
okay.
were just saying you shared a hotel room with Rob. You
Yeah,
didn't overlap, which is wonderful, right?
yeah.
He was doing the 84 because he's an 84 guy, isn't
Right,
that right?
right.
And
Yeah,
you're a 90 guy. Okay,
yeah.
cool.
He showed up on the way back through Lodiac as literally as I was reaching for the doorknob to leave. He came in the door. That was
That's
our
perfect.
overlap. Yeah,
Perfect. Yeah,
yeah.
that's
It
great.
was. Yeah. I
Cool.
hope I didn't leave him wet towels.
Okay. Well, you can apologize now. Okay. How many
Yeah,
years later? Is it not? Is
yeah.
it 10 years later? Wow, it is.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
that's
is.
crazy. Cool. Well, keep going then, because I
Okay,
definitely have a question about the guy sleeping in the dorm.
sure.
Yeah.
So from there, left to get to turn around and back. That was other than passing the site where somebody had recently died, I think.
Oh,
And I never got the full story on that, but uh, I passed while the ambulance was still there with the person probably in
oh
it. And
boy.
that was a little nerve wracking and stuck with me for a while. Made it up over Travail down to Brest, turned around. A funny thing happened. You mentioned Mr. Spreadsheet. I had given a friend my spreadsheet. He had not changed any of the numbers in it.
Okay.
I guess he knew he was a stronger writer, and that would be maybe his low bar minimum. And when I got to the control, he was standing there, and I thought, oh, that's why a coincidence. It's nice to see him. And I said hi. And he says, oh, there you are. He had been waiting for me
Oh
on
boy.
my ride plan to show up in that little tiny window of time.
That's funny.
He had way more confidence that I was sticking to my schedule than I was. And I had been. I think I was within 15 minutes of the schedule all the way out. That kind of collapsed on the way back, but you know,
And Kevin, how do you like? Do you have a printed? You had a printed spreadsheet with times. Is that how it worked?
an Excel spreadsheet. It's embarrassing.
Okay.
I break it. I, I put an estimated speed based on what I know of myself for every single turn in the entire spreadsheet. That's a lot for PvP and for 12. But
Yeah.
yeah, and then I calculate it out, and what's the totals? Then it tells me what how
Yeah.
I'm going to do it. And I build in breaks and I build in,
And was it a physical document like on paper?
back then it
Or
was, yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So you were kind of the weirdo with 30 pages of spreadsheet
Yeah.
checking it off.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's funny.
I had them per control and yeah, 3x5 cards for each control. And
Oh my God.
yeah, it was a thing. Yeah.
Brief aside, did you find at any times it was difficult to force your brain to calculate where
Yes.
you were? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the real
Yeah.
challenge, isn't it?
Yeah. On two rides that's happened to me. On one ride, I couldn't burst 600K, which I decided to ride straight through without stopping just to see if I could. And that was down to San Luis Obispo. Yeah, on that one and on this PBP, there reached times where I couldn't, like I do calculations in my head and I couldn't remember whether days had 20 hours or 24 hours in them. And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
it was
really hard.
a bit of a mess there. Yeah. At one point I got myself into a pickle because somehow the weird calculations showed that I was like right on the cusp or even, had no cushion. So uh, I rode as hard as I could, which isn't much at the end of a third day. Right.
Yeah,
But I realized later when I got to the control, I had quite a bit of cushion there.
yeah. Um, so did you ditch nap? Let's talk a little bit about your ditch nap and dorm experience.
Yeah, apparently I didn't get as much sleep as I thought I had at Lodiak. So when I left there, it was middle of the night and I was still kind of sleepy.
Yeah,
So did do a ditch nap there. I don't think it was very long. I think it was one of those 15-minute, close your eyes, alarm goes off, get going kind of thing.
okay.
So but yeah, I got to do that. That would there were a few things that I wanted to do on this ride that I'd always heard about. Ditch nap was one of them. Sleeping in
Yeah,
the was another one. Eating some of the control food. Those
yeah.
were,
Okay, so I'm gonna read you a quote about the dorm experience, which I found amusing. You ready?
yes.
So I think a bit of context. You said you wanted to experience a dorm, so
Yeah.
you kind of lay down, and next thing, there's a 300-pound Polish rider was spread eagle on his back, snoring louder than I had ever heard anyone snore. So loud that volunteers brought a stream of visitors to peek in on him. He was his own roadside attraction.
This is true. This is true.
I love that the fact that there's a Polish guy out there who just had a great experience, keep telling everyone he slept everywhere. And meanwhile, there's hundreds of people that remember him.
A lot, too. I sure do.
And could you sleep at all?
Oh, absolutely. I slept like a rock. I slept
Okay.
like a rock.
Okay.
I had my foam ear things and my iPads or whatever the eye shades, and I just was under. Yeah,
Yeah,
instantly.
that's cool. Let's talk about hallucinations, okay?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the Polish guy did exist, but later on, you did find yourself hallucinating. And have you
Yeah.
ever had that experience before?
Once before, and that was while driving the Furnace Creek 508 up
Okay.
in there. And I had a team of four with me, and I was driving. They were with me. And all of the bushes along the road turned into Maurice Sendak, where the wild ones are. And it wasn't like they resembled it. They were Sendak.
Okay. So this one in PBP, tell us, what were you seeing out there? It was obviously in the night.
Yeah, there was like fresh tarmac across these farm fields that we were on towards. This was in the third night. It had rained. It had rained a lot that last day and a half, and there were all of these potholes all over the road, and I kept dodging the potholes, and all of a sudden one was there and I wasn't going to be able to dodge it, so I got ready to go down and I just right across it, and quickly realized that the potholes weren't there. My mind was turning the wet spots into potholes, and I could look
Wow.
at them as they went by. I could see the
That's
rubble at the
crazy.
bottom of it. I could see the sharp edges.
Yeah.
It was.
That, it's pretty amazing you experienced that because you obviously had done three 1200s before.
Hmm. Hmm.
You also got a lot of sleep, it sounds like.
Hmm.
But it still can happen.
Yeah,
Riding
yeah,
through the night, I think that's what happens. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. The Gold Rush. I was with a group of five or six on
Yeah.
third night, and they were all hallucinating, and we were trying to keep them safe. There was two of us that weren't, and we were just trying to keep them safe because one guy thought it was a cliff, the center line, and he had to be on the left side of the center line. I was
That's funny. Yeah, like I remember stopping. It was the first time I did PBP, and it's probably the third night. And I wasn't hallucinating, but I just felt the whole. We stopped at a control with lots of people, and I just felt I was suddenly in a cave
like,
with not being able to see much beyond like 4 feet. And
sure.
then I got bike back on the bike, and thankfully I was fine again. At least I thought I was. So
Well,
I don't know.
we're
Maybe I didn't do 2019.
we're out there
Okay.
on our third night. We're not fine.
Exactly. You're right. So that's true. I definitely want to talk about the last part of the ride, maybe your, as you enter the park, do Adrian hands or not. But is there anything else you want to talk about on that ride before we kind of get
Um,
towards the end?
you know, one, the two things that I remember well, I remember the people. I remember the people and the tables. You always hear about that. I mean, that's the thing you hear about PvP and the generational families that have been taking care of PvP riders. And we had a bunch of pins that Rob did.
Yes.
I handed out pins. I wish I had had five times as many pins. I handed them out, and I looked for little kids to give them to, and the joy that it caused. And
Yeah.
neat because it's San Francisco. I mean,
Yeah.
San Francisco.
Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that was one of the things. Another
You,
thing.
can I just stop you
Yeah,
there?
yeah,
Because for
yeah,
me as well, that's
yeah.
the memory. Like I'm pretty sure I could go over to Brittany tomorrow and just start handing out pins on the street to kids, but it wouldn't go down
It
well.
was,
Okay,
yeah,
no. But
same
if you're on
thing.
a bicycle on PBP, it's just
Yeah,
so memorable, isn't
yeah,
it? And
yeah.
to
It
your
is.
point, that generational thing, you almost feel that kid you're giving a little pin to will be volunteering in 40 years' time or whatever.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. They'll
Yeah.
remember. It'll be a treasure of theirs. Right. Uh, Another thing I remembered, key memory, was riding with Kevin Main, and there was a little town, God knows where it was, along a little river, and there was a bar on the side of the road, and we were hungry, so we went in, and they were serving. It was just pasta with butter and sage on it, and to this day, I tell people when they ask, "What's the best meal you ever had in your life?"
Yeah.
That's I've eaten at Michelin restaurants.
Yeah.
It was the best meal I ever had in my life.
Wow.
It was perfect. It was the perfect meal in the perfect
That's
places.
so cool. It
Yeah.
sounded like, Kevin, you actually stopped at a lot of places that were not controls for food. Is that right? Or,
Um, yes, yes. I
okay.
never, until late the third night, I never ate control food.
Okay.
Yeah. Um,
Cool.
yeah. I ate off of people's tables and I ate in cafes and only the third day. Yeah.
Cool. So then we're getting towards the end of the ride. If I was you, I still would have thought, okay, something can go wrong here. Okay, I'm looking at my top tube, looking at the carbon fiber. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, but were you feeling that at all? No? You said, okay, this is in the bag.
Um, I never feel that completely. I was standing and only riding standing at that point. My legs
Okay.
were all swollen and stuff like that. If this were my first 1200, I'd be freaking. I This was my fourth to approach the finish line on, and it happened on all four. It's like I never ride standing up. The last 100 miles, I can only ride standing up. It's just everything else is
Yeah.
used up. Um, but it's raining. It's raining really, really, really hard, like
Yeah.
torrential rain.
Wow.
Uh, and I'm approaching the finish, and I'm looking at my watch, and I've got the time. I've got more than enough time because remember, I'm shooting for 90 hours, and I'm
Yeah.
approaching maybe an 88-hour finish, and then I realized, oh, I could delay, and a bunch of my friends did. They went off to, is there a horse track or a race track or something near the end? They had
Sure.
gone over there to hang out at the restaurant
Okay.
there so that they could join the Adrian Hand Society. And I think I thought about it for like 30 seconds. And
Yeah.
as I said at the very beginning, I just wanted it to be done. So
Yeah.
I kept going. Yeah.
And looking at your final time, which was 88 hours and 17 minutes,
Mhm.
not a huge amount of time to spare, but you had done it. This was your fourth time,
Mhm.
1200K. So you didn't feel in any way, oh,
No, I
okay,
never at any point did I feel, except for that one time when I couldn't calculate numbers, I didn't feel like it was ever at risk. And I felt
cool,
like that hour and 45 minutes or whatever was a vast, huge amount of extra time, right?
cool. Well, Kevin, congratulations. Good for
Thanks.
you. Okay. Um, well, let's talk about your plans for future PBPs.
Mhm.
Sounds like there is no plan for a future
There's
PBP.
not.
Okay. Okay.
I
And
moved,
why did you decide not to attempt another one?
well, I moved from the Bay Area to Minnesota. All of my bicycling is geared towards Point Reyes in January, building up. you know.
Yeah.
I'm not a super powerhouse, so I needed some time to build up. Um, People do ride in the winter here. Um, People do ride when it's 20 below.
Yeah.
I didn't learn, and I haven't learned how to do that. So the first ride of the year usually tends to be about right now. And the, the time from the first ride as 100K, and then a 200, then a 300, then a 400, then a 600
Yeah.
is so short. I haven't adapted to that.
Okay.
And
And tell me
yeah,
though, when you finished that PBP
yeah.
2015,
Hmm.
like you were obviously feeling really good. You had done four
Hmm.
1200Ks.
Hmm.
Did you think at that time you would keep as fit or
Yeah,
okay?
if I had stayed in California, I probably would have continued doing them. I probably would have done
Yeah.
PvP. At that point, I was in love with randonneuring, and I think I would have continued randonneuring until
Yeah. What
whatever,
year did you move to Minneapolis?
2016,
Okay.
2016, and it
Oh,
was
fine.
pretty
Okay.
sudden. It was not expected, right? Yep.
Okay, so then how have you kept yourself busy since then? I know we talked about you volunteering, for
Hmm.
example, the Cooley
Yep.
Challenge, which I've heard about. It goes from Minneapolis, it's a one-way thing to somewhere else.
Yeah,
And is that
it
right?
goes to Minneapolis, almost over to Madison, Wisconsin. Almost all of it is in Wisconsin,
Yeah.
and
We had Bike Farmer. I interviewed him here. Do you know Bike Farmer at all?
no, I don't think so.
So he's based outside of Madison. He's a big YouTuber guy. He's a
Sure.
repair guy, but he also had PBP kind of dreams. And his breaking point was, he did a 600K. He was going to do the Cooley, but
Hmm.
never did it. Yeah.
That coulee looks pretty rough. It's
Yeah, really?
people think Midwest, they think it's flat.
Yes.
I've driven that thing 4 times, 5 times in my car, and it's
Yeah.
wow. It's got a lot of
Yeah. So it was nice to be in the car, essentially. Is that right?
it was
Okay, good.
nice. It was nice.
And the other thing you've done as well, Kevin, is you got into hiking. Is that correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us more about that.
So I I love doing road trips, and I like to have things to do as I do the road trip. I collect roadside attractions other than 300-pound Polish people, and and along the way, I started doing a lot of day hikes and some really really nice ones and things like that. So
Yeah.
I started picking some because my motto is anything worth doing is worth overdoing.
Yeah.
I'm not content with just the short hikes. So I did last year my first longish hike, which was the Grand Canyon rim to rim in a day. So that was a
Wow.
15-hour hike. Maybe feels like about the effort of a 400K.
Yeah,
And then I've in 2 months I'm going to do the South Dakota Centennial Trail, which is a 120
yeah.
trail. And then
Yeah. I ask because it is difficult to wean yourself off randonneering, right?
mhm, it is.
And PBPs and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you've successfully transitioned. Is that accurate?
I think I have. I still
Okay.
do an occasional 200, 100, but yeah, I don't. I've lost the desire to do anything that goes overnight. I'm
Yeah.
getting older. I'm 64, and I know there's a lot of riders my age. I just find that my judgment late at night isn't
Yeah.
always the best, and I don't want to risk it.
I get you. Cool. So, Kevin, we're going to end with your three tips that guarantee a finish. We're going to go
Sure,
one, two, and three.
sure. I actually wrote them down here. So, tip number one: have a plan. It doesn't have to be a spreadsheet, but know generally what you're going to do. And then don't let others dictate modifications to that. Right? Sometimes you decide you want to ride with a bunch of people. That might be great, but they're going to ride too fast. They're going to ride too slow. Just ride your own ride, and follow the plan you set out because you've already envisioned that's going to get you to success. If you want to succeed, do what you originally set out. The other one, keep moving, right? I'm slow, very, very slow, but I'm successful because I just keep moving. I'm always moving. I
Yeah.
People fly past me. I see them in the control, and then later they fly past me again, and I
Mm.
see them in the control, and then they fly past. It's because I'm just efficient in the control. I just keep moving, right?
Yeah.
I calculated once if I took a camera with me and stopped to take one picture that took 1 minute every hour on the PBP, that's an hour and a half of time.
Amazing. Amazing.
I
Yeah.
finished with an hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
That would have eaten up.
So that's why there's no photos of the event. Okay, but that's fine.
That's right. And the other thing is, especially for PvP, interact with the locals. I mean, long after the ride, you're going to remember that much more than you're going to remember your finishing time. Or, I mean, I had to look up the finishing time when
Yeah.
you asked me. I didn't know. I knew it was somewhere towards the end, right?
Yeah.
But those interactions with the people are going to be something that's going to stick with you forever.
Oh, that's cool. Well, Kevin, it's been an absolute pleasure. Really, really insightful. It's so good to hear from someone who DNF'd and then completed PBP and then was able to successfully extricate themselves from PBP and
Sure,
randonneuring. So nice work, okay?
sure. It's been fun visiting the old memories.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.